Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here on the second episode of the Brutal Buddha Longevity Podcast. We're thrilled today to be hosting this podcast with Dr. Chris Bethart. Chris has been a longtime fan of Brutal Buddha and vice versa. You know, the age-old problem of spinal issues, back pain, sports injuries that relate to the back, nerve issues, has been something that the Brutal Buddha community has been talking about in conversations with Ro and I personally, in wider groups, in our Facebook VIP community, and really across multiple events that we've attended over the last couple of years, including the Spartan Race, High Rocks. People just struggle with back pain. It's something that is not going to go away anytime soon. But there's one man on this planet I know who's made it his life mission, his life passion, his purpose to help one by one and over time eradicate back pain for men and really all people across the globe. So Dr. Bethart comes into this podcast from Houston, Texas. We're going to go ahead and get kick-started. Before we do, just for anyone who's new to the podcast today, Ro and I are the co-founders of Brutal Buddha, a men's athleisure company focused on inspiring fulfillment and helping men live a longer, healthier life. So with that, Dr. Bethart, can you share a little bit about yourself and your practice with PT Solutions?
Yes, Evan, thank you so much for the intro. You hit it like you couldn't be more clear on absolutely my mission. And yeah, thank you so much for just introing that. That was awesome. Yeah, so just a little bit about me. I have been a longtime fan of Evan and Ro personally, and Brutal Buddha. I've got my gear. I love their stuff, and I am located in Houston, Texas, where I have my practice here, and I really just focus on people's backs and necks. And of course, I'll do like the in-person, adjustments and like kind of like the the hands-on work. But really, over 95% of what I do is do online coaching. And the reason for that is because after over 10 years of practice, I've learned that if we don't give people the tools and the know-how and the roadmap to help them fix their back pain, neck pain, then it won't get done. And Evan, you're 100% right when you say that it's such a problem. It's an epidemic. It's an over $50 billion a year industry in North America. Yes, and people, I mean, there's money being spent by big pharma and in just the medical community on MRIs, injections, imaging procedures. And don't get me wrong, some people need some of that, but it's being overutilized. And yeah, that's my life mission, my friend, is to really help people on an individual level, like eradicate their back pain, define the root cause, and to learn how to treat their spine.
How did you get into this industry? It seems like you need to be super passionate about medical and anatomy and really sports physiology overall, human physiology. So can you share with us just a little bit about how you got into it?
Yeah, when I was in college, I really thought I wanted to be a firefighter, but I ended up working underneath this physical therapist, and she was brilliant. And I saw the type of impact she had on people, and that really, she kind of pushed me a little to say, hey, like, this seems like you're really interested in this, might be a good fit. And that's how I ended up going, into this field. And the one thing that she taught me that I hang on to this day is honestly is like the need behind the need. So people need they have back pain, neck pain. So they'll tell you that their need is, I got to fix this back pain, neck pain. But the need behind it is, I've got to fix this back pain so that I can play with my son, so that I can, I can tell my boy, like, hey, like, daddy's strong and healthy. Like, yeah, I can be your hero. I can be your stronghold. And I think that has always really driven me to serve people and to really fix this problem. It's not always easy. It's not always simple.
Do you find, as you work with dozens and now probably hundreds and even thousands of individuals, right, that people are starting to latch onto the concept of preventative measures, preventative health, to avoid these issues, especially if they've experienced it before, right? Like, you've known me for a long time. I've had back issues on and off over the years. And every time I'm in it, I say, if I would have only just done these arches, if I would have done, Dr. Bethart's, practice a bit more religiously when I was in good shape, when my back felt healthy, when I didn't think about it. Are you seeing people adapt a bit more to this preventative concept?
Yeah, I love that question. I think it's a little nuanced. It's a good question. It's a little loaded because I think that people's intentions are really good. Like especially
Mm,
these new generations coming up, the health is wealth movement, like people are having a little bit more work-life balance. Here's where I think it's a little bit tough, Evan, is that back pain and spine pain in general, it can be cyclical. Like it can
mm,
be episodic. It can come back, and yeah, you know very well.
mm,
And a lot of the reason why is it's not for like lack of trying, but it's for lack of knowing and
mm,
knowing like, hey, like this is my regimen. Like I'm gonna do like for example, I'll do my yoga 2-3 times a week. But in addition to that, I need to be doing my core strength, my glute strength. I need to make sure that my ergonomics are correct, that I'm lifting well, that when I vacuum and mop, I actually have good spine ergonomics. Like
mm.
it's a thing that we do. It's a way to live. It's a way to move. I try to tell my clients that come in from the jump. I say, hey, listen, my program is a roadmap, and yes, we're going to work on some things, and we're going to do block time where every day you put a 30 minutes aside. But on top of that, you have to learn the skills.
Mm,
It's not just as easy as I'm going to do this, I'll do Cobra, 10 reps 4 or 5 times a day. You've also got to sit well. You've got to stand well.
mm,
You've got to walk well, lift well. Like you have to do those things well. There's
mm.
skills to learn.
Yeah, I've watched so many of your videos that you've put out over the last year. You talk a lot about sleep as well. So I know we'll get into all of these topics. We want to make the next 20 minutes laser focused on all things spinal health and wellness, preventative, injury prevention, etc. I know you've got maybe 3 or 4 specific topics you want to talk on. So tell me about this study you were chatting to Ro and I about. We'd love to hear about it, and then we'll get into the other topics later on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this is always exciting for me. I love to show my clients this. So here it is. It's called the Expose study. It's EXPOSS. And
Okay.
if you do a Google Scholar kind of search, or if you go on PubMed, you can find it. And what it stands for is extremity pain spinal source.
Mm,
Now, here it is, Evan and Ro. This is the reason why I get excited about this for my clients. And basically, it's this study where they take, over 100 people and they're showing these people that have isolated shoulder pain, isolated elbow, wrist, hip, knee, ankle. Those are the extremities. And they're showing that these people have an entirety of their pain coming from their spine or a component of their pain coming from their spine. So a quick example, Evan, to make that like really palatable. So here's what the numbers show. In 47% of people who have shoulder pain, it can be completely abolished through treating the neck, or a large part of it can be like maybe it's like 50%. You got to work on the neck, 50% shoulder. But in
mm,
about 47% of those people, there's a component of the spine. So you cannot ignore the spine. It's so
mm.
common. Like it leads to other problems. And then another example, of course, there's all those numbers, and I can send a link on that. For the hip,
Yeah, we'll
you
put
know,
we'll put for anyone who's interested, we'll put the link with those numbers down below, along with Dr. Bethart's info, in case you're curious to learn more.
Yeah, I love that. And like, for the hip, I got a lot of people, a lot of men and women come see me and they're like, they've got this like, lateral hip pain or like their groin hurts. And over 70%, about 71% of these people in this study are showing that, hey, it was actually indeed the back or, and,
Mm,
and the back actually completely solved the hip, or it was partially the hip that needed to be addressed,
mm,
but there was also a component of the back that needed to be addressed. We are a system, and that's
mm.
what I love about sharing that information about the Expo study. We've been doing it for a long time, guys, and we always, especially chiropractic, for hundreds of years, they go back to the spine, like the source
Mm.
of a lot of people's pain and dysfunction. But now we finally are having the research to prove, hey guys, like if you're having knee pain, like there is, I'm looking at the numbers right now, there's 25% chance that it's not just isolated to the knee. It's also, there's a spine component. And I've got a nice YouTube series, which again, I'd love to share that with you guys, so you can drop it
Absolutely.
down. And it just really just shows how to break down these orthopedic issues and I mean how to manage them
Mhm.
without MRIs, injections, procedures, like at least to start the process to see if these things can be treated without going and doing a physician visit.
It's incredible. I think these are the kinds of studies that we need to leverage to get people incentivized, to get ahead of
Yeah.
their issues. So I've hogged the mic a good bit as one of the co-founders. Bro, any thoughts, insights, anything you've experienced that ties into some of these pieces Chris is talking about personally?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Evan and Chris. I mean, I just find this very informative. I personally, I've had a number of injuries. I mean, I'm 33 years old, but it is interesting that the spine is so key, to so many different conditions. I mean, one thing that I experienced, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, Chris, is how to prevent lower back pain, especially when you sleep. So if you have any tips on that, I'd be very interested to hear them. But it's great to hear you talk about the importance of the spine and spinal health, and it's what's really inspired Evan and I to build this brand as the world's first protective athleisure brand for men. And it's all around how do we provide health benefits to men, and we've done that with our shorts, with our package protector that we've patented, and it's all around protecting the modern man, the modern athlete when he's working out. And actually the new flow shirts that we're launching, they actually have, you'll appreciate this, Chris, not to give a product plug, but they actually have a piece of mesh that goes along the spine, and it's actually meant to, you can see Evan wearing it right there. It's actually meant to protect the spine when you're working out, when you're doing sit-ups, and your back is crushing against the hard ground, or maybe you're on a yoga mat and you're on your back, quite frequently. So we really want to evolve our products to actually help men, like Evan said, live longer, healthier, and more fulfilled lives. So I'm so glad that we're working on something that is so prevalent, to so many men, and women as well.
I love that. I first of all, I need that shirt ASAP, and that is like that's so cool. And I think that like that is like a wonderful place to start is just recognizing, even just having that part of the shirt to like remind you, like, hey, this is your center, and like that's like such a cool concept. Evan, I have to see that shirt. That's so cool. So
Oh, don't
you
worry. We'll
guys
be
are.
we got 3 colors. They have your name on it. Don't you worry about that.
That's what I need. I love that. Yeah, for sure. That's so cool, Ro. And to go back to answer, your question, like, going back to like the sleep thing,
Mm.
there's so many reasons why people either be woken up because they're like in a little bit of pain, or they wake up in the morning and they have, you know, an increased amount of pain. And that happened to me personally. And Evan, and
Mm.
I know you and I, we've talked about that as well with you. I have had a history of sciatica. And let me tell you, the morning was the worst.
Mhm.
Mhm.
When mornings happen, and in Row, is that kind of what you're alluding to? Is like
Yeah,
the pain in the
morning,
morning?
definitely
Yeah,
morning. Yeah.
totally. So you know what it is? It's kind of twofold. Like first thing I usually talk to people about is okay, yes, firm mattress, sleeping positions. That's a big part of it.
Mhm.
But we cannot ignore the fact that the 4 to 6 hours leading up to sleep time, that really affects the spinal tissue and the fluid that comes into those discs. So
Mm.
every morning when we wake up, and anyone listening to this, I think you can look this up. This is very common knowledge, your spine surgeon will tell you this, your physicians will tell you that in the morning, there's a phenomenon called imbibition. And that word imbibition comes from imbibe, or, drinking or taking in fluid. So every disc of every level of your spine, it actually gets filled with fluid because you've been horizontal for anywhere from your 6 to 10 hours lying down. And if you have morning pain, basically the increased fluid in your discs are exposing the problem. Here's what I hear a lot, Ro. I hear a lot of, men and women saying, yeah, it hurts, it's tough in the morning, and then it starts to loosen up through the day. That phenomenon is really pointing me to, all right, this, this is a good thing, but it's probably there's a little bit of disc that's being distorted and touching on those spinal nerves. And that's super common. Here's the good news. This stuff is so treatable. I mean, the discs between the spine are very malleable, but you have to learn how to, all right, well, let me work on my sitting. Let me work on my ability to stand, hinge, walk, all my habits. Am I doing the things that are going to allow any distorted disc material to centralize back to underneath the spine? And it happens. It happens all the time. So for anyone listening, I don't want to use this as a scare tactic. This is good news that your spine can adapt back and your mornings can become pain-free with a little bit of work.
Nice. That's great. So it sounds
like too long-winded.
No, I mean, it sounds like, essentially your habits in your day-to-day life heavily influence that lower back pain that you experience in the morning. And so once you uncover those different ways you're living your life, or, like you said, like even now I'm sitting here and I'm really slouched over. I probably shouldn't do that because it's a couple hours before bed, but it sounds like if you work on those little things, it can really help reduce or eventually eradicate some of that back pain in the morning.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for sure. My favorite phrase to tell people is remember when it didn't hurt? Because there was a time where, we didn't have this back pain, but we develop habits over time, and those need to be, deconstructed, and new habits need to form, and your spine can heal. Every part of your body wants to heal. If you cut my finger right here, I mean, that skin, as long as I don't irritate it and, move it too much, it'll heal in 2 to 3 days. Not a difference between the tissue in the back. Now, certain tissues have different amounts of blood flow. So healing time is directly correlated with blood flow. So I've got a lot of blood vessels right here in my finger, so it's going to heal pretty quick. Now, if I have an injury in my spine, you'd be surprised, but there's actually a lot of vascularity. There's a lot of blood flow, therefore a lot of healing.
Incredible. It's just so obvious to me. It's just so cyclical, right? Like the more you stay, and also it ties back to consciousness. The more conscious you are about your spinal health, the better your day-to-day feel will be, which also impacts mental and emotional health as well. So this is incredibly, incredibly insightful from a scientific standpoint. I'd love to know from you, Dr. Bethart, as well. Talk us through some of the more practical ways that, the average person can improve their spinal health. I know you had a couple more topics on the docket. We have about 10 minutes left to go. So we're going to pass to you to bring us home on these last couple of topics, and then we'll wrap up here in about 10, 15 minutes. So over to you for the next topic.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there was a question earlier, though. What was the question, Evan? Sorry.
Oh, so I was just saying, like, as we go through, some of these scientific research topics and a bit more of the academia, like, what are some of the practical things people can do? Very simple things, when they get out of bed, maybe a 5 to 10 minute routine suggestion you have, or like you said, the 4 hours leading up to sleep is so critical. But I think people get scattered the 4. People have calls, they have dinner. What is like 1 or 2 key takeaways for both of our audiences that people can really remember and instill into their day-to-day practice?
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I'm totally with you. I love that. Here's the thing about it is when it comes to, treating your own back, like it really depends on where you're at in your journey. If
Mm.
someone has an acute bout of back pain and they're just debilitated and they're having a hard time walking, getting out of the couch, sitting at a restaurant, like there's a high likelihood they need to calm that down. And that can definitely be used with with lidocaine patch, or an injection or an anti-inflammatory, or just finding positions of comfort if you're in that acute stage. Now,
Mm.
moving on to like more directly answer your question, for people that are dealing with this episodic pain or lack of confidence, is what I'm finding is like, as I'm kind of at bay, but like, I can't do too much or I'm hurting. What really needs to happen is we need to do, of course, a physical exam to make sure that you are moving well and you don't have any major restrictions. But on your own, one of the most powerful things you could do, going back to habits, is, your top like 2 or 3 habits: drinking 8 cups of water a day before 6 p.m. And I know it sounds so simple, but it's huge. Your tissues need hydration. B, are you walking 30 minutes 3 times a day? Now, that's a hard one. Most people are like, they're like, oh, yeah, I am in theory, but they're not doing it. So,
Mhm.
8 cups of water, two walks at 30 to 40 minutes. And then C, are you sleeping? Are you sleeping, your 8 to 10 hours? We heal during REM sleep. Those big three things, Evan, are so huge. Are you drinking enough? Are you walking enough? Are you sleeping enough? I mean, those are those are foundational. And the thing that I find the hardest for people, Evan, is the walking. And
Mm.
as simple as it sounds, all of my program and everything I do to train people to gain the skills in order to overcome their back pain and then keep it away, they're based on these indigenous tribes who live
Mm.
in India and South America, in parts of Peru, where these cultures and tribes they don't actually have no reported back and neck pain. Now, you may
Mm.
be thinking, oh, it's because they don't have access to healthcare, but no, like these people are surveyed. They don't, a lot of them don't even have words in their language for back
Mm.
pain. And it's because there is what's called a kinesthetic tradition,
Mm.
basically a fancy word for teach me how to move. And those kinesthetic traditions are just passed down. Like, your great great grandmother was teaching you, or your great grandmother rather, is teaching you how to hold your baby because you
Mm.
live nearby your great grandmother, and you're looking at your mother or your father, and you're looking at the way he or she walks around, how he or
Mhm.
she hinges forward to grab something as opposed to standing lazy. And what do? You start mirroring.
Mm. From an early
So
age.
yeah, from an early age. So, again, those big three habits are like the big tangibles that I really want people to know is like, if you have back pain, and there's a fourth one, I'll give you the fourth one. You ready? The first one is, of course, we said drinking your 8 cups of water, then
Yeah.
it's walking, then it's sleeping. Here's number four: panic. This is, it's so small, but it's so profound. Like, people get into their back pain and they think they can't be helped.
Right.
They
Right.
go to they
Hopeless.
go to the medical model.
Mhm. Mhm. So you would
That is
say
detrimental.
it's managing the stress and the response to back pain, because probably even in these tribes, right, they feel it a little bit, and they decide to work with it, right, work through it, work with it. And you hear a lot of this in sports, right, like, oh, if you power through, like, it'll eventually go away. I think most people in society, if you start to get intense back pain, you start to freak out, right? At least I do, right? I freak out a bit. So I agree with you. I think that's definitely a strong one to consider. Is how
That's
you
a
is
great
how
way
you
to
react.
put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's because there's a downward spiral. Like if you have a little tweak, you keep moving through it. Movement is fluid, right? It creates like lotion in the joint, and but you're absolutely right. We tend to panic, and then if you go to the medical model, you're going to hear a lot of things that are kind of scary. Maybe your
Mhm.
physician's telling you, hey, that you got a really bad case of bone on bone, or you're just getting old, and all those things that's not true. Like, a
Mhm.
lot of those things are not true. Or hey, this is like one of the worst backs I've ever seen. That's those things are not helpful.
No.
People can get better, but they need to heed the warning of pain. Listen to
Mhm.
pain, but do something about it. And usually that do something, actually every single time, is don't do nothing. Don't just lie down unless you need to for,
Mhm.
a short bout. You need to start moving. It's usually because people are in static postures for too many hours. You guys understand that.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, look, we could probably talk for days and days and days about spinal health because it's such a critical topic to our community, obviously, to your patients, your wider community. I think it's this everlasting yearning to keep growing and learning around this space. And that's why we're so lucky to have you as one of our really good friends, as one of our, key, physicians in the community to help our customers. So just so anyone's aware who's listening, if you own any Brutal Buddha gear, even if you're on the verge of getting Brutal Buddha gear, if you're thinking about it, if you're part of our community, Dr. Bethart offers a complimentary, no strings attached, half an hour consultation. Learn a little bit about your anatomy and have a virtual session with him and see where it goes. But with that, would love to just hear, where can people find you, Dr. Bethart? We'll drop the info in the comments below, but let us know all the different channels so people can seek you out.
Yes, absolutely. So I am on Instagram, Dr. C Bethart, and also on Facebook as Christopher Bethart, and on YouTube, again, Dr. Christopher Bethart. So yeah, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. You can Google my business and you can search me out in Houston, Texas, if you just put in my full name. Also, I'm located on the McKenzie Institute as a certified MDT, or mechanical diagnosis and therapy practitioner. So yeah, I'm in those places. I'd love to drop a link and just kind of, keep sharing information.
Man, it's like Hercules has arrived. I love it. I love it. I love it. I would love to ask this before we transition to the end. Is there anything that you want to share in a 2-minute overview to the audience that we haven't covered yet, or a very quick summation of what you would consider to be the top 1 or 2 points from today's session?
Yeah, no, definitely. Say that the top couple points of today's session is that I would love for people just to kind of remember, as if they listen to this, is you know number one, just own your health. Like, own
Mm,
it is your spine.
mm,
It's not your physician's spine. It's not my spine. If you're
mm,
having like back pain, neck pain, or based on the expo study that we talked about, if you're having some shoulder, hip, knee pain, if you're having pain, get it addressed. It's the need behind the need. It's not just to eradicate some aches and pains. It's for your family, for your kids, so that you can be a strong human and you can age well. And I just want to.
mm,
So that's the first thing is really just like owning your own health, and then yeah, going back to those habits. I think I
mm,
love what Brutal Buddha and you guys are doing. You guys are this brand is a bridge for people because it allows them to actually talk with the founders and get information. You guys are putting out awesome Facebook information all the time. So yeah, just keep leaning in and yeah, get your habits better. First one's
mm.
own your health, and the next one is work on your habits, work on yourself every day. Buy some shorts too; those are amazing.
I love it. I love it. Dr. Bethard, that's absolutely incredible. I'm going to pass it to Ro to bring us home before we round it out here. So, Ro, any synopsis from your perspective? Any final thoughts to bring us home?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, this has been really informative for myself, Chris and Evan. Thank you guys. I've definitely learned a lot as somebody who, experiences lower back pain and, spinal pain. When I sleep specifically. So I've got my tips of, drinking more water, walking more often, getting good sleep, and, just building micro habits around my day-to-day life. So I really appreciate that. I know our community appreciates it. and really appreciate you, Chris, offering a complimentary session to our community. Yeah, I'll just end there. Thanks a lot, Chris, for coming on our second podcast. We're really excited to have you. And yeah, I think we'll just end it there unless you guys have any final thoughts.
I love
final
to just say,
thought is, sorry,
you go. No, you go.
Final thought is, I've got a couple of really good videos that I want to send to you guys personally. They're being edited right now, but number one, they have to do with spine shapes, of learning how to put yourself in a good spine shape. And then the second video is spine sparing activities. I just want to give you guys like value, and I just want your community of men just to be able to learn like from the program that I'm doing, just to help them just start solving some problems on their own. So I'll send you guys that as soon as they're ready.
Awesome. Yeah, we'd love to check it out, Chris. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'd love to just say and wrap up here to say, Ro and I have been extremely inspired, by you and your passion to, evangelize spinal health for your audience, for the people in Texas, and really globally now with this new virtual program you've had for the last couple of years. To see your latest videos take off and get millions, and some of them over 10 million views, I believe, over time, is really inspiring for Ro and I, as well as we talk about all topics, holistic health and wellness for men and really all people. As we definitely look to push the concept of health span and longevity for our audience. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Thank you again, Chris. Thanks, Ro. And no matter what happens in life, stay brutal.